Thank you very much, and
We are
welcome
live.
back, everybody, to the State Senate Committee on Institutions. Again, I'm Joe Benning, the chair of the committee. We have been talking about secure facilities for justice-involved youth, and I see that our next witness is up with us and ready to go. Sheriff Mark, or Captain Mark Anderson, welcome to Senate Institutions. I'm not sure you've ever testified here before. But let me just say some basic ground rules on behalf of the listening audience that may be out there, since we are live on YouTube. And believe it or not, there are people out there on YouTube who are listening to us who have never really been involved in the committee conversation of the nature that we're about to have. The first thing that I usually ask witnesses to do is to first introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then launch into why you're here and what the issue may be. The other part is that should you be talking in such a way that you and I might understand it, but I think there may be for instance, an 8th grader out there listening on the screen, I may interrupt you and just ask, can you explain to us what X, Y, or Z happens to be for their benefit? So Mark, good afternoon and welcome to the show, so to speak. The floor is officially yours.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for your time. And you are correct, Mr. Chair. This is my first time in Senate Institutions. So thank you for the opportunity. For the record, my name is Mark Anderson. I'm the Sheriff of Windham County. I was appointed Sheriff in 2019. I began employment with the Windham County Sheriff's Office in 2004. With that, I have extensive experience working with both justice and non-justice related juveniles and youth within and outside of the custody of the Department of Children and Families, as well as with the Department of Mental Health, working with secure transport of patients in psychiatric crisis, as well as with criminal populations in terms of transports as part of the sheriff's statutory responsibilities. Because most people look at a sheriff and say, well, they're a police officer, I'd like to start off just explaining some of the delineation between us and a traditional municipal police department or the state police. Statutorily, the sheriff's responsible for providing secure transports to prisoners after their arraignment. We ensure that they make it to a jail or a prison and to the court. We are also responsible for providing secure transport to mental health patients within the custody of the state, as well as for justice-involved youth. Separate from that, we are also responsible for serving civil process, which are documents issued by the civil or family courts. And then unrelated to all of that, we can contract with a variety of organizations, governments, towns, municipalities, villages to provide law enforcement services. For reference, my agency, approximately 25% of our budget is for law enforcement services and 75% is doing everything else. So what people see the most of my agency is law enforcement, and what we really do is probably in partnership with the state of Vermont and its various agencies and departments. We have, prior to my time, my department was involved with SRS, which I can't even tell you what that acronym stands for, other than it was the predecessor to DCF.
Social and Rehabilitative Services.
Thank you, Senator. And with that, we have, I've personally been involved in transports of children who are runaways, risk to themselves or others, or in some form of circumstance in which their removal was not possible by a social worker or a trusted family member or something that made sense. It is not ideal, especially when we talk about trauma-informed practices. It's not ideal for a police officer or a sheriff's deputy to be the method to do this, but sometimes it's practical and necessary for the safety of everyone involved, including the juvenile. Through the last, leading up to 2 years ago, my department has been involved through a contract with the Department of Children and Families to provide secure transport to juveniles when they cannot obtain their own transport. I believe you heard Commissioner Brown speak to that earlier. And generally, it was our desire that we only provide secure transports, which is the highest level of transport for youth involved in the department's custody. We prefer that a social worker or some other alternative means, a contract agency that is not also charged with law enforcement powers, provide this, because we don't want to traumatize youth with the involvement with a vehicle that might have blue lights on it. It might have a partition in it that separates them from the driver of the vehicle. We are looking to support their ability to get treatment. We also acknowledge that some youth are just as involved and sometimes involved with the top 12 crimes, which can be violent crimes of nature. We have pioneered practices with the Department of Children and Families, as well as with the Department of Mental Health, for safe and humane transport. We have worked to use things such as no restraints or soft restraints, especially when it is not a justice involved individual. We have worked to use deputies in plain clothes, so there's not an appearance that they are a law enforcement officer, but rather an individual who's just an adult with the youth or patient involved. We use unmarked cars when possible, again, to minimize the perception of law enforcement being involved in this. And so the follow-up question is, why would law enforcement be involved? And that's because oftentimes we're dealing with people who are violent or willing to hurt themselves or jump out of a vehicle to elope because of the circumstances involving their specific case. After the pandemic hit, many sheriffs, I believe 13 of the 14 counties do contract with the department, with the Agency of Human Services to provide these transports. With the pandemic, numerous departments faced a variety of challenges, some financial, some personnel related, in which it became challenging to leverage the services that we used to provide to the Department of Children and Families as a collective across the state. My department, along with the Lamoille County Sheriffs and I believe the Bennington County Sheriffs, ended up as the top 3 agencies through the pandemic providing secure transports for the Department of Children and Families. And that was simply due to the ability to leverage our staff to support the department. Working with Commissioner Brown and his staff around some of the issues, we had identified from our perspective a variety of challenges that DCF faced. One challenge is that when a youth needed placement, it was often when everybody was starting to go home or was already home. Senator Benning, you made a reference earlier during earlier testimony today regarding what happens at 3 a.m. And that was the challenge. My department has a 24-hour dispatch. We have people on call 24 hours a day and accessible. And so the initial call, once it comes to my department, because all other venues are unavailable, would be, okay, we'll send a team. Where do we need to send them? And sometimes it's sending them to Bennington. Sometimes it's sending them to Franklin County. It takes time to travel. And so we would try to leverage resources around the state to get personnel to the location that they needed to be. Some of these locations were conference rooms of police departments. Not ideal. Some of them were emergency rooms. Not ideal, especially during a pandemic. And so as we're trying to identify how we can get make the common sense relief to the various systems that were impacted, whether it's a police department that's understaffed or sick, emergency room that needs the beds for patients involved in the pandemic or otherwise. It could be a DCF caseworker who has worked their full shift, they're ready to go home, and now someone's sitting in their office. We're trying to figure out ways that we could find a safe, secure, and appropriate place that a juvenile could be placed in partnership with the department. The difficulty that we found is that while we had vehicles that we could place a youth in, we didn't necessarily have locations. Everybody started to clam up, if you will, when we started dealing with the pandemic. And so places that we used to be able to go into became unavailable. a pivot point to that was to use things like hotel rooms, which, as everyone's aware, a hotel, you can buy it for a night. They have beds, they have bathrooms. I mean, basic shelter and sanitary needs. And then, as I imagine everyone here is aware, as well as for everyone in YouTube land, one of the workers was assaulted in a hotel room by a youth involved with the department. A hotel room is not an ideal setup. They're certainly not designed to be trauma informed. Some youth might already have faced trauma in hotel rooms for a variety of reasons, sometimes ranging from poverty and homelessness to a variety of other circumstances. So we, as we are starting to look at it from the perspective of the sheriff, saying how can we help solve this problem, it became a rather reasonable solution to say, why don't we purchase something that can be a trauma-informed space, that can be accessible to the Department of Children and Families, and we can staff it if we need to. We can allow the department to be able to access it and staff it with their people, which is what we would prefer. And we could be a partner in standing up a program that allows them the immediate accessibility without necessarily a long-term or even medium-term program. So that's where we started. We have had, I don't want to speak to the specifics of the project I'm working on right now, just because it is actively in negotiation. But the concept overall remains tried and true. We have seen this occur in the state of Vermont and other places in Bennington County and in Lamoille County. My deputies have staffed and supported DCF staff as needed, understanding that we are a course of last resort. And it would be my intent, though, to work with the commissioner and his staff to make sure that we provide that trauma-informed environment that's appropriate, that's immediate, and accessible at all times, depending on the level of need and intensity of the youth, that we could scale it up and scale it down as needed in a facility that's specifically designed for this.
If you look 10 years down the road, Mark, what would you see as the overall solution to the brick and mortar question? What will we need? Where will we need it?
I will qualify this statement with, I am not in the shoes of the commissioner. And so from my perspective, I see a need for long-term programming, medium-term programming, and short-term programming. When I say short-term, I mean available within 0 hours and up to maybe a week. Medium-term is probably more than a week and less than 6 months. And then long-term is towards some of our more chronic, either chronic trauma issues or chronic crime-related issues or delinquent issues. I could see the state having value in a detention center at a small scale. There are struggles and complications with not having that, and public safety issues with not having that. I also see an immediate need of when the dime has dropped and we need a space now. We need a space now, and we need to be able to get youth out of law enforcement agencies that aren't designed for them to just sit in for several hours on end. We need to free up emergency room beds where they are currently housed because there's just nowhere else to go. So 10 years down the road, I think we need to have those solutions. I think they should be regionalized solutions that are accessible for Southern Vermont and Northern Vermont. And I think if we bifurcated the state and look to program those goals on either end of the state, I think it would best serve the rural nature of all of us.
So I understand you don't want to get into too many details about your particular effort here, but do you envision what you're trying to do in your neck of the woods being taken on by anybody else around the state within the Sheriff's Association?
We have had conversations with other sheriffs who are interested in doing this. There is a point of transition that will be coming soon for the Sheriff's Association. Many of the sheriffs, I don't think it's a surprise, they're going to be retiring soon. So we're going to start seeing some new changes around the state where I can't comment to what a new sheriff or an incoming sheriff would choose to do. But there's overall an intention and desire to support the agency and specifically DCF.
Okay. Well, appreciate you stepping up to the plate. That's a good sign that we see somebody trying to contribute to solving the problem. Committee questions? I don't see any hands. So Mark, I'm sure you'll be back to speak with us in the future. I wish you the best of success in your conversations. It really is appreciated when somebody tries to step up to the plate and do something to solve a problem. With that, you're welcome to stay around and listen to the rest of the conversation, but we're going to shift gears a little bit. I have scheduled at 3 o'clock BGS coming back to see us, but I'm hoping that some of those folks may already be with us. At least I see Eric. And,
unfortunately, I haven't heard anybody else being able to arrive early, but if they do, I will let them in immediately.
I did just text the commissioner to ascertain her whereabouts.
Okay, Eric, are you going to be introducing Eric Pembroke?
If Eric and Eric are the only people in the room, I'd be delighted to. Yes, absolutely. I will be introducing Eric Pembroke if he's available.
Okay.
And then the commissioner will be presenting on phases of project development, which is riveting stuff.
Uh-huh. Well. We're waiting patiently.
Tick tock, tick tock. Let me see if I can get Pembroke. Maybe he can come in earlier.
I figured we were going to have a lot of committee conversation there during the first presentation, but miscalculated on the willingness of the committee to contribute to the conversation.
It was good.
I
good
did
time.
my part,
You don't
Mr.
have to.
Chairman. I tried.
How's my tie now?
Oh, you're
That's
looking
good.
marvelous, sir.
All right.
Looking marvelous.
They're being nice. It's a little off center.
Yeah, tell your wife to straighten it up for you.
Oh, it should be a little off center. That's sort of rakish, you know?
Rakish, yes.
Yeah.
I was gonna try and run a Capital Bill book up to the store and grab a curry chicken sandwich at lunchtime, but
Yeah, I
HCI
know.
ran long this morning,
Yeah.
so.
I'll mail you one if you pay the freight.
Good luck getting it before it goes bad, because the way the post office is running these days.
I'm heating my house off last year, so I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I FedExed a sandwich to someone once.
I have a post office right across the street from my office, and in judiciary, we take about a 15-minute break. And all I wanted to do is run over there and buy a roll of stamps. And I'll tell you, it's like 3 times this has happened to me. I go over there and I'm immediately behind somebody with like 6 to 8 boxes who has to have each one of them weighed separately and mailed to different places around the world. And I come rushing back into the committee and they're all looking at me like, where you been? And then the last time that happened, they didn't even have rolls of stamps anymore. What's going on? I've heard the cat food problem, but rolls of stamps not being available at the post office.
Oh, and we have BGS beginning to arrive, I believe.
Wonderful. Let them right on in.
Will do.
If you're wondering if, wait, okay, who are we getting?
Well, I see Eric Pembroke is here. Joe Asia is about to come in.
All right.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We're seeing who's rolling in as the witness list seems to grow.
All right. Senator, from Mr. Chairman, from the
Yes, sir.
Division of New Faces at the Department of Buildings and General Services, I would like to introduce Mr. Eric Pembroke. He is our new Director of Planning and Property Management. I don't know if you remember Mark O'Grady, but he succeeded him as the Director of Planning and Property Management when Mark O'Grady moved up to Deputy Commissioner. And Eric Pembroke, I would love it if you could just tell us a little bit about where you come from.
Any relation to Dick?
To Dick?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
really? All right.
Indeed. Yes. He gave me many tours as a young man through the big house. So yes, Eric Pembroke. I am as Mr. Falcorn was saying, the Director of Planning and Property Management. Going on a whole 9 months here with the state after spending 28 years of my career with KDP, which was formerly known as Keurig Green Mountain, and then formerly known before that as Green Mountain Coffee. So I did the lion's share of my career right there in Waterbury in the real estate and facilities world. So here I am. Thanks for having me.
A couple of questions. First off, you referred to him as Mr. Philcorn. Was that a requirement for this conversation?
Yes, it was.
The other Eric.
The other Eric, sorry.
I'll spend some time with you talking about him, okay?
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good.
Is he your actual supervisor?
Oh, no.
No.
I'm looking for the
that's the
chain
best
of
part.
command. Who's the next line up?
Jennifer Fitch, I believe.
That
Will be
is
the commissioner?
That's why I
correct.
have the best job in the world, because I have no direct reports. I'm an aberration.
Don't say that loud.
Yeah, I'm sure your commissioner would have something to say about that.
May even show up in a moment and say it.
So Eric Pembroke, how did you become involved with this this cast of characters, if you will?
Well, that is a wonderful question. After 28 years with KDP, my ride came to a sudden and abrupt end. Unfortunately, like many large organizations, they did what they do, and a lot of us folks that have been there for a long time were sent on our way to look for new careers. My timing was perfect. So the position of the Director in Planning and Property Management came about, and I am now here today. So
What was
long
your
story
role with Keurig?
oh wow, I had a bunch of different. The last role that I had with Keurig was I was the Director of real estate and facilities. So I had all of our real estate portfolio underneath me and our facilities team as well. So when I left, we had some 25,000 employees. When I started, I knew everyone by name. So I often joke saying if I was a little smarter when I was younger, I probably would be doing something completely different, because all the stock options that I received, I would have, played that hand much better than I did. So here I am. Hindsight's 2020.
Hard to believe a coffee company in Vermont is growing so big. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Coffee's got nothing to do with Vermont, but other than that, I mean, it's just growing. Wow.
Right.
It was a pretty amazing story and an amazing ride. I joke and say I obviously like change, because we changed so much to the course of my career, from names to products to the way we brewed coffee. So yeah, it was a good ride.
Speaking of which, I have a wonderful Keurig coffee machine. Is there any danger of that? It's about 6 years old now. Any danger of that coming to its end?
I would say that you are you probably outlived its useful life. Yes, you're doing very well. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Well, I'm the guy who gets my wife's coffee in the morning, so I don't want it to snafu on me all of a sudden, and then there'd be hell to pay not
Is it gonna
getting
go-
her that coffee in the morning.
It's not going to go the way of the Betamax, is it?
No, they have a useful life. Keurig is going nowhere. The brand, the brewer, absolutely not. But the useful life of the brewer, it has a shelf life, depending on your water.
Do you know Stephen Pakulski?
I do, absolutely, yes.
Good guy.
He was an engineer, absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah, we had some good times together, absolutely.
We did some business together. He's a good fellow.
Oh, good. Small world, right?
It is.
I was waiting to see if you were going to claim him as an additional friend.
Only you, Joe. You're my only friend.
Okay. Eric, I'm just looking down the list here. It seems like you're the Principal Assistant Department of Buildings and General Services. Does that outrank the Director Design and Construction position of Joe Asia?
It's gray. I think if you look at the org chart, I'm a line off of the commissioner, but nobody's
You're
connected.
You're way out there. You're
Yeah,
way out
I
there
mean-
in the organization chart.
Other duties as assigned. Principal assistant is a very flexible hire depending on the needs of the organization. So that's why
So when you have the BGS flow chart, are you on the opposite page?
I think my square is a whole different color. I'm really not sure, but no, it's the commissioner and deputy commissioner, and then Judy, the executive assistant, and me, the principal assistant, are off of that part of the cluster. And then the tree builds out with the directors. But
He's higher up.
am I? Okay. I don't act it.
I just should explain for the YouTube listening audience that we're talking about a flow chart of a government agency. And if you've never had the opportunity to actually look at one of those, I happened to look when Phil Scott first became governor. I was in the room where they had their organizational meetings, and I was astounded by the flow chart that was on the wall. It took up an entire wall to figure out who was where. And each agency has such a flow chart. But for those of you that have never experienced looking at one of those things, it really is an eye-opener. I am due at 3 o'clock was the initial conversation. I don't want to jump the gun if we're going to wait for the commissioner, but if somebody would like to launch us in the conversation, we are here to talk about capital project updates. And I'm not sure, Joe Asia, whether you've got that assignment or where we are with that conversation.
I did not have that assignment. I believe that the commissioner was going to do a presentation on the phases of building and our design and construction.
Okay.
So she was the top dog here.
And if you look at the, Mr. Chairman, if you look at the org chart that would be on the governor's wall, we serve collectively at the pleasure of the Secretary of Administration, who is the Grandmaster of the capital budget. So I think she's coming in on the 11th, and she will give the grand overview of the governor's budget proposal. So we're kind of trying to stay in our BGS box without stealing the thunder of leadership up the chain, as it were. And now I am pleased to see on screen the cavalry.
Commissioner, welcome back to Senate Institutions. We are generally just jibber-jabbering about the status of BGS's flow chart to figure out who is where in the institution. And it's always a fun conversation, but you are the chief cook and bottle washer, as I understand it. And for the benefit of you, because you haven't been listening to this conversation, we actually do have a YouTube audience. I have no idea at any one point in time who is listening, but interestingly enough, I've recently been receiving emails from people who have never watched any such proceeding before. So I'm going to repeat what I've said quite often. There is a desire to keep this conversation as, I used to say low, but I've been told that's not the way to talk about it. So we'll talk about the 50,000 foot view level, so that anybody who is actually watching can understand the basics. And I do understand that you're going to give us at least a brief presentation here today. And of course, we always ask you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you before getting into that conversation. But there is also the possibility that you may slip into some language that is familiar to you and to us, that I may red flag as something that may not be familiar to our listening audience. So if I interrupt you, that's probably the reason why. With that said, welcome back to Senate Institutions, and the floor is officially yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jennifer Fitch, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Commissioner of the Department of Buildings and General Services. A little bit of background on me. I'm a licensed professional civil engineer who began my career with the state of Vermont in 2004. I worked for the Vermont Agency of Transportation until 2017, when Commissioner Cole, who had been the prior secretary at VTrans, moved over to BGS, and he asked me to be his deputy. He has since moved on from state government, and I became the commissioner last year. It's been amazing to actually work in both the Agency of Transportation and in BGS. And in many ways, when we talk about projects, there are similarities. Buildings, I will say, are far more complicated than bridges, and I'm sure my peers back at VTrans would poke me about that. But it is very true.
Be careful.
I know, but it is very true. Because, bridges are meant to stay up and be static and stay in place, right? Buildings are very dynamic. We have a lot of building systems. Those buildings are almost like living entities, if you will, with their heating and their cooling and their lighting and all the other systems that go with them. So, and today I was coming in to talk about the phases of building construction. And the reason why we wanted to come and give a brief overview and presentation is because we often get questions. And so we felt like doing an overview, and then we have a nice one-pager we can hand out afterwards, will be a great reference as we continue to have more committee discussions about proposed capital bill projects. And with that, Eric, did you send the presentation in advance? It looks like Eric disappeared.
He's coming
Sorry,
back.
Oh, there he is.
I'm coming back. I thought Judy had sent it up. I thought I saw that email this morning. If not, I can.
I
organize
don't
that.
know if Judy sent it up.
Well, while Alex is searching for the answer to that question, I have a question immediately. Between our session last year and this session, you were gracious enough to vacate the office you were in and move into new quarters. How are they?
Actually, I think they're great. I have two other people on the screen here with me from actually three other people here from BGS. So what I have appreciated about the move is that I had staff in 5 different buildings here in the complex. And now all of my central office staff is on one floor, which is great. And I'm already starting to see those synergies, especially with like my Office of Purchasing and Contracting, who does so much work with many of the different other offices and divisions within BGS. And it's been great because even today I was in Joe's office and we had one of our procurement specialists come right down the hallway and talk with Joe about something that he's dealing with. And it was great for him to just be able to walk down the hall and have that conversation. So we are loving the space. We're very happy to be here. The swap was wonderful for BGS. And House Corrections and Institutions will be taking a tour of both 2 and 4 Aiken tomorrow, as well as the 5th floor of 133, which is where we reside now. So hopefully at some point, if you get the opportunity to come back in person and back to Montpelier, we can give you a tour as well.
We'd like to take advantage of that opportunity whenever our leadership says we're back in Montpelier. I don't know when that will be. It may not be in my legislative career lifetime, but we'll see. With that, I didn't know whether that particular explanation was part of your presentation this afternoon, but I wanted to make sure we got an update on how you guys were doing in your own offices. So
And it's
Alex,
also,
Eric,
yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was also going to say it's also really nice because now we're BGS, right? We're the experts in buildings and we're the experts in how we use space. And so what's also great about 133 is it now allows us to apply our own space standards to ourselves. So for example, I have lots of folks that are going to be in open office space. And then of course, directors have private offices, but we really haven't had that ability to do that before because we've been in sort of these older, more chopped up buildings where you can't use the space as efficiently as you can on a floor like this as well. So we've also optimized the way that we use space. And now we're a leader. We can show our space to people and say, this is how we do space at BGS. So it's great that now we get to be a leader in what we are applying to our customers.
Well, that brings another question. Does Eric Philcorn actually have a room with a view?
I
Eric?
share a beautiful room with Judy Bruno. because the both of us are running in so many directions, we decided that we could double up in one office and yeah, I have a view right out to the Winooski River, kind of a little to the right of the DMV building, up the hill to National Life. It's pretty nice.
You said you want to be further away from the commissioner though, right?
Well, Senator?
I actually think Eric is closer to me than he used to be.
Yeah, I used to be at the
Commissioner-
end of the.
Well, that's why he said he wanted further away.
That's right.
Commissioner, just so you know, before you came on, we were talking about the BGS flow chart and that Eric is on the other side of the page in that flow chart. So I don't know whether Alex and Eric have figured out how to pull up a screen share here.
So I have put a link to the presentation in the chat for the meeting, and I can either share my screen or Alex can grab it and share his screen, whatever works more efficiently for the team.
Whatever works for you guys. I've given you co-host privileges, Eric, so you can go ahead and share it if you'd like.
Okay.
That's the man behind the curtain, in case
I
anybody
know.
was
I love the last name, I have to say.
Let me see. I think I like.
Thank you.
He's already had the joke about let's get cracking the Kraken, so.
Oh, releasing the Kraken. Can anybody see that yet?
Yes, we can.
We can see that you're trying to share the, oh, there it
There we go.
goes, for me anyway.
Okay. You have an architectural rendering
Yes, we do.
of some sort. That little yellow spot was where we were putting the dirt for the groundbreaking for the physically secure recovery residence. You never know.
Wonderful.
So
So before we go and dive into the presentation, or that's fine, we can stop here for a second. So this is something, so as I mentioned, I'm a licensed professional engineer. I was also a project manager at VTrans. And part of the reason I came to BGS originally was because of my project management experience. And the administration felt very passionately that we needed to take a fresh look at how we deliver projects and bring on more tools to help us be successful. But particularly for me, one of my favorite phrases that we used to use at VTrans all the time, and I have tried to institute here at BGS is, let me make sure I say this right. We want to underpromise and overdeliver, which means what we don't want to do is we want to promise you something and then not be able to deliver on our promises. And I feel like for a very long time, and I know we have members on this committee that has been in institutions for a very long time, that's exactly what we've been doing all along, in that we don't do our due diligence in certain phases of projects. And as a result, right, we're either doing one of two things. We're either trying to commit to you to a date that we're going to deliver a project that we don't have the ability to, or we try to commit some kind of project estimate to you, something, this is going to cost XX in design and XX in construction. And then we come back to you year after year and we need more money. And the reality is that it's true that over the life of a project, you may need more money than what you anticipated anyway. However, doing more due diligence in some of these phases should reduce the number of times we're coming back to this committee to ask for more money to complete a project. So that's really my goal, which is why it's so important to talk about the different phases of delivery and talk about which ones I believe are the most important and what changes we're making here at BGS to meet those goals that I have for the team over time. So with that, can we go to the first slide on planning?
yes, we can.
Thank you.
We're there. Okay.
We're there. So I want to say, out of all the phases of construction, Joasia loves construction. Jennifer Fitch loves planning. So the good news is you got people on both bookends that really love and are passionate about those phases and why. So the reason why I am so passionate about the programming and planning phase is this is what we have not done at BGS. Oftentimes, I'm sure you know this, Mr. Chairman and Senator Mazza, right? People come to us and they say, hey, gee, we've got this project we really want to do. How much would it cost us, right? And then we have like one night to like go on the back of a cocktail napkin, do some general estimates in our head without having any of the project requirements. And then we show up the next day and we say, well, we think it's going to cost you this in design and we think it's going to cost you this in construction. And every time we do that, it bites us. And so we don't want to do that anymore. So the most important phase of project delivery to me is this phase. And the reason why this phase is so important is because this is the phase where we're figuring out all the requirements of the project and we are defining the scope. We're also creating an initial estimate of what we think the project will cost in the various phases over time, right? And we're developing our project schedule. In my mind, we shouldn't be asking for design or construction funding in most cases unless we've done planning and programming first. It is the most essential one. The goal of this phase, again, like I said, is to define the project objectives, determine building and user requirements, and develop a scope of work. This entails gathering information from the intended building occupants, determining the effect on the existing facilities or projects in planning, and need for corollary projects, and identifying applicable zoning, building codes, and other regulatory requirements. So typically this phase takes about 6 to 14 months in duration. And again, at the end, you have a nice little package scope for both design and construction moving forward. The only other thing I'd like to point out on this slide before we leave it is we often use that word, Mr. Chairman, you said this was important. We often use programming in 2 different ways. So when I say programming in my world, in building construction, what I mean is exactly that, the requirements for a future building. When someone like our customer says programming, right? Like when DOC, Department of Corrections, says programming, they're talking about the programming, or what should I say, like classrooms or things like that for the incarcerated individual. So it's more about teaching them the skills, right? So when they leave, they have those life skills and will be successful out in society. So that's a different kind of programming than the programming we use when we talk about buildings. But I know sometimes it gets confusing because we'll both use it when we're testifying on the same project. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So your programming is dealing with the red tape involved in developing a project. DOC, in the example that you use, taking, for example, a risk reduction programming, is what they're talking about at the same time.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Are there any questions on this one before we go to the next phase?
I can't see anybody, so if somebody has a question, just shout right out.
Senator Mazza.
How, during these difficult times about supplies and pricing and labor, how do you come up with some sort of an estimate in these times, which are so difficult because number one, products have doubled in cost, labor has gone through the roof. So something that cost $100,000 a year ago is probably going to cost $140,000 now. So that must be a tricky solution.
It is tricky, Senator Mazza, and you'll see that throughout the rest of the phases, every time we have a new phase, we're doing that estimate again. And it is true, right, that our estimates can go up or down depending on what's happening with the economy. One of the other things that we really need to do to address that issue, Senator Mazza, about potential cost increases, is we should also be doing what's called adding a contingency. So for example, when I worked at VTrans, every single planning project that I did for bridges, we would add 20% onto our initial estimate, because now we have a contingency built into that project, which will in theory absorb those price increases over time without us coming back and asking for more money. Now that said, to your point, Senator Mazza, we've seen price increases as great as 40%. And
Right.
So my 20% contingency that I used to use would not be successful currently in the current economy. But before the pandemic, that was a really good 20% was a really good estimate at the beginning of a project.
That was safe then, but not today's world because
That's right.
Materials have gone through the roof and maybe higher. Who knows? It's just,
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're absolutely right. The next slide, Eric.
We are there.
So schematic design is really where we start moving from having a program or a written set of requirements, if you will. And now we're going to take and we're going to draw it on a page. And now the building is going to start to form and take shape. And so the purpose of the schematic design, like I said, is to convert the project program into physical drawings of space. The project team determines the areas, physical requirements, and relationships of all the required building spaces and components. This includes a complete description of building systems. We know we love those HVAC systems, plumbing and electrical. It also includes interior and exterior finishes and the building site. This process goes through several renditions to develop a set of schematic drawings, floor plans, site plans, and building elevations, and a probable cost of construction. So again, we're going to do that estimating every single phase of construction to address just what you're talking about, Senator Mazza. And that's both changes in the design over time, but also changes in the market, just like you were talking about.
So you used a word, HVAC system, for our listening audience. I know that we're all familiar with the term, but could you just briefly describe what that means?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So it's heating, venting, and air conditioning. So for the State House, it's those big units that if you were to stand behind the State House, you can see from the backside.
Airflow.
Airflow, you got it. And heating and cooling, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any questions on schematic design? Okay, design development. So as we are kind of going through all of these phases of design, so we went from planning and we started in design. There's 3 phases in design. So this is schematic was first, design development is second, and then construction documents is third. So this is the second phase of design. So then design development, the schematic plans and elevations are reviewed, revised, and expanded to incorporate all the details and specifications required for construction. These may require changes to the project program or to the budget, to your point, Senator Mazza, or both. By the end of design development, the design drawings and specifications are sufficiently complete to establish and define the facility's size, function, configuration and spaces, the operation or use of equipment, and the materials for all of the principal building structures and systems. The probable cost of construction is updated. Permit applications are also developed during this phase. So again, we're further defining that design phase, and we're working our way to developing contract documents, things that I can put out on the street for advertisement. Any questions on this one? Okay, Eric, beautiful. So now we're moving into the last phase of design, and this is the construction document phase. So this is where you have a complete and accurate drawings and specifications for bidding. So this is kind of where the rubber hits the road, if you will. Construction documents are compiled from design development documents. They include all of the drawings and specifications necessary to complete the project and are the basis of bid documents and the construction contract. Permit applications have been submitted and are awaiting approval. A final estimate of probable construction cost is submitted with the final set of plans and specifications. So now we're at the end of this phase. We're now at the end of design, and we're getting ready to bid it out.
So I'm going to jump in here just to let the committee know, and especially Senator Mazza know, if you are not aware of this, traditionally, the design costs have been part of the capital bill. That is about to change. And we have had discussions in the committee before about why is it that the capital bill is actually funding these portions of a construction process. We are no longer going to be doing that, and I'll leave it at that for now until we get a full explanation of the capital bill. So Dick Mazza, you finally got your way. Let's put it that way.
What did I get?
The cash fund.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, architect and engineering costs,
Okay.
Coming out of the capital bill.
in theory.
In theory, if it's supported by the legislature.
Oh, it will be. We're going to make sure of that.
We hope so.
Sorry to interrupt you.
We hope so. And we're getting close to the end. There's only a couple more here. So now we've moved into the bidding phase, right? This is where we're going to advertise the project and put it out on the street. And the goal is for contractors to bid on our projects. This is typically a 2 to 4 month period. So when construction documents are complete, the project is ready to put out to bid. The bid process is a method of selecting and hiring contractors. Qualified construction companies and subcontractors are provided with bid documents, which they use to determine the cost and prices for their bid package. The bid submissions are reviewed and accepted based on completeness of the bid package, compliance with the terms in the bid documents, construction suitability, and bid cost. After all bids are received and reviewed, it is sometimes the case, and you're going to have some this session. It is sometimes the case that the bid cost exceeds the authorized project budget. For construction to proceed, either the project budget must be increased or changes made to the scope or quality of the project. And so, to your point, Senator Mazza, we have seen a huge spike in construction costs, and there will be several projects that we are proposing in the capital bill to request additional funds so that we can complete the construction on those projects. Any question on this one? Okay, here's the last slide. This is Joe's favorite, construction administration. He loves to get out in the field, and one of the reasons why Joe is as talented as he is because he spent a lot of time out in the field when he first came to BGS, both being a clerk of the works and just generally getting out and seeing how things come together. And so I always believe that having a little hands-on experience is very valuable when you're in the design world. The design team monitors and observes the construction to make sure the contractor is constructing the project per the plans and specifications. We're both doing that with our project managers, and we usually hire a clerk of the works to oversee the project on behalf of the state. Reviews and approves submittals and shop drawings for conformity to the plans and specifications. Answer questions and resolves issues that develop on the site. Occupancy of a building can only occur when the project is substantially complete and the fire marshal issues a certificate of occupancy. At the time of substantial completion, a variety of documents are produced or obtained that complete the construction documents. These include as-built, record drawings, markups, closeout, operations and maintenance manuals, which are really important for us because as our buildings are becoming more sophisticated over time, and you really do need to have a good handoff between the contractor and operations and maintenance at BGS to ensure that we understand how to operate the systems properly. Permits, warranties, and other documents necessary to occupy and maintain the facility. So those are the 6 phases of building construction. And then our last slide kind of pulls it all together.
Oh, it's blurry.
Oh, this is the blurry slide. So what we wanted to do here was and unfortunately it's not as easy to see. We have a better cleaned up copy, but I don't know, Eric, where you have it.
Try to find it. Start talking.
But what we tried to do is, if you look at the left-hand column, we've basically given you all of those phases that I just talked about. And then when you look out across the document, we're giving you approximately how many months each one of those phases take for a variety of projects. So we gave you a small project at the top, we consider it to be a medium project in the middle, and like a large design project on the bottom. A large design project, for example, would be the new physically secure recovery residence we're building in Essex, or it could be a new correctional facility. Those are buildings that have a lot of requirements to serve the population that is within those facilities. And those ones take longer to deliver than, let's say, a roof replacement project. That would probably be what we would consider to be a small project, and we could deliver that, within a 2-year time frame. The reason why this is so important, and this came up today in HCI, so Mr. Chairman, I'm sure you'll be hearing a little bit about it, is because BGS and the administration over the last several years has been moving to a pay-as-you-go model. And that means we're only requesting the money that we need within the year that we're requesting that money. Traditionally, what has happened in the past is that larger chunks of money have been given to BGS in a shorter time period, right? But then, so we have all the cash in hand, but then we spend it out over several years. The treasurer will tell you that we are required to spend the money that we get in the capital bill within a 2-year time frame. And so again, this is another reason why we really want to focus on asking for the money that we need for the year that we need it. The other benefit of doing that is that it allows us to fund more projects, right? Because we're only asking for the money we need rather than front loading it all, in which I have fewer projects that can be funded because we're asking for more money. The other point that I'd make on that is that if I ask you and I front load all that money, Senator Mazza, like we were talking about, let's say you give me all the money I need in a 2-year time frame, but it's going to take me 6 years to deliver that project, I'm going to be back at year 5 or 6 saying, I don't have enough money, right? Because of inflation that has occurred over that 3 to 4 year period. And so for all of those reasons, we want to both to be honest about what we can deliver and when. We want to be transparent with the legislature and the taxpayers of Vermont and only request money for the year that we need it in, which again allows us to have more projects that are ongoing over time rather than fewer and front loading money. So, and also we just want to be transparent about the amount of time it takes us right up front to deliver these kinds of projects. Oftentimes what happens is, again, we'll come in and we'll say, oh yeah, we can deliver that we can deliver you that project in 2 years for this amount of money. And then once we get into the design process, we realize we can't do that. And so we want to be as open and transparent and honest with all of you as possible.
Very good flow chart. I appreciate the color coordinated image. It's very helpful. I like highlighted things in the Capitol bill, and somebody came up with that idea a few years ago. They were brilliant when they did that.
We'll make you a wallet size one.
Yeah, you use the term HCI. That is the committee that shall not be named, otherwise known as the House Committee on Corrections and Institutions. Questions? If we could take the screen share down so we could see each other again.
Stop the share. There we go.
Committee questions? You bowled them over. Senator McCormick.
Not so much a question as a request. I'm colorblind, which is a misnomer. I see colors. What I don't see is red and green. So if you're going to do color coding, blue is better.
That's
Thanks.
helpful.
Can you see this? Can you see this bill, Dick, or what? Is it green or blue?
I got to tell you, I actually, as a kid, did not know that money was green. It looks gray to me.
Oh,
It
wow.
does. It does. Yeah, and you could use either red or green, but not both.
Oh,
Because then,
phew.
if you use like red and blue, the one that's not blue, I'll figure is red. So
I saw the number 1 on that bill. I'm betting there's bigger numbers in his wallet.
I thought there might be a couple more zeros behind that first one.
Yeah.
It brings to mind.
I didn't know why he robbed his change little thing there for
Yeah,
change.
all right.
You got it. Oh, geez, it is. Oh, there it is. Okay, there it is.
It brings to mind a joke that I'm very familiar with. It was actually a true story, but we were up on a trip in Canada, and one of my motorcycling buddies was talking with a Canadian, and the Canadian said, "How do you guys figure out what your bills are? Because they're all green." And my buddy said, "Well, they've got numbers on them." Anyhow, Commissioner, very good presentation. We appreciate you guys coming by this afternoon. I am quite sure you'll all be back, and we'll look forward to having some more conversations in the future. Unless anybody else has got any witty comments or questions.
Well, no, she was praising Joe Aja quite a bit. I better be careful if you want a raise.
I know.
Don't do that. Don't do that. No. You always tell them they're not there yet. You expect more.
Joe
Senator,
knows.
would it be okay if it was in the big bill?
Joe knows that I have very high expectations for him and his team, which is why we have been working together to, again, integrate some new tools. We have some project scheduling software we're trying to bring online. We also have a capital planning module that we're hoping to implement through our workplace integrated management system that is under implementation now. In addition to that, Joe and I have been working on standardizing some of the work and how it gets done through his team. So I have spent a lot of time with Joe. And I think that he takes a little while to come around sometimes to new concepts, but I think I finally got him there.
Well, I wish you'd do a better job in praising you, though. It would be nice,
You don't, as a commissioner, you don't get praises. That's how it works.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I didn't get any cash out of the deal either. I got a lot of these other things that she's promising.
Well, the other things are really nice, but the $64,000 question is, did he get a corner room with a view?
Yeah, right.
No, I do not have a corner room. I do have a view. I do view that at the State House.
Joe has a better view than I do, and Eric does. So Eric Pembroke and Joe Asia have nice, beautiful views of the lawn and the State House. Eric Philcorn and I, we look out to State Street. But just so everybody knows, the reason why I put us where I did, because I could have hunkered us down. I could have taken the commissioner's office and I could have hunkered us down in a corner away from staff. I actually put us front and center. So in order for staff to walk onto the floor, they actually have to walk right by the commissioners
Ooh,
commissioners row.
every morning, you know what time they come to work, what time they leave.
I do. And I say hi to all the employees when they come in and I walk the floor. Usually I try to do that once a day. And so my goal was to try to interact with the staff as much as possible, which is why I put us where I did on the floor.
They usually
Interesting.
stop. They usually stop at my office on the way to her office to see if what they're going to tell her is
Okay,
going to fly or not.
And do you have the Keurig coffee machine in your office?
No, I'm not a K-cup person. I
know.
used to work for Vermont Coffee Company, Paul Ralston. So there's a little bit of a schism on the floor in that regard.
But Eric
Yeah.
Pembroke has quite a bit of experience and we do have a kitchen that is finalized and it will be in that room, right, Eric? And
I do know somebody that can help us with that.
When you say it's finalized, does that mean you've gone through the design and architectural planning?
you got it, Mr.
Good.
Chairman. That was perfect.
We are in construction.
Yes, we
Interesting.
are.
Well, we've enjoyed having you all this afternoon. I'm afraid for the committee's purposes, we're about at the end of our day.
Oh,
and,
darn.
We'll bring you back again. So Alex, if you could take us off of YouTube.